folks, welcome to the channel Thinking Theology. I'm Don. First up, I don't establish any religion here. I don't establish atheism here. This is a channel that's devoted more toward discussing theological topics, and I include in that atheist topics, of course. So you can't refute something if you don't state what you're refuting, and in order to state what you're refuting, you've got to be thinking it. To refute something, you've got to be thinking it. It doesn't mean you're believing it. It means you're looking at the premises and the arguments made in order to say, that makes no sense to me, doesn't meet my threshold of proof. I don't believe in God. I do believe in God. I'm agnostic, whatever. In that vein, Jordan Peterson's struggle with Christianity or Christians. I don't know what this is about, but I'm going to put the link. I got this off of George Janko's channel, YouTube channel. So I'm going to put the link to his channel below just out of respect. And in any case, let's see what Jordan's got to say. All right, here we go.
There's a question you hate, and it's, do you believe in God? And I love your approach on that.
Oh, people don't know what they mean when they ask that question. So
I would love you to elaborate on that.
It's nonsensical. Well, because what people usually want, Christians do this to me mostly, what they really want is they want me to validate their theory of belief. And they don't even know they have a theory of belief because they think what belief is obvious, and it's not obvious at all. Like, is belief your willingness to verbally assent to the reality of a set of facts? Well, that's what an empiricist would say, or a rationalist. And most Christians who ask me that question are rationalist empiricists, and they don't even know it. And so they want me to say, well, God exists the same way a table exists. And that's just not helpful. That isn't a helpful question. It's not formulated properly. And then there's many other forms of belief. So you can say one thing and do another, right? Then you might say, well, then what do you believe? Do you believe what you say, or do you believe what you did? And I mean, people are full of contradictions like that.
Or hypocrisy.
And so I would say,
I love that.
Generally speaking, what you do is a much more precise and accurate marker of what you believe than what you say.
I think the word marker is a better word. So far, I'm disagreeing with his perception of this because I think he's overanalyzing it there. But I want to see where else he goes with it. We're only a minute in.
Now, if you were fully integrated, what you say and what you believed would be the same thing. But that's pretty damn rare. And people will say, well, I believe in Christ. And I think, you do you? Really?
Look at your actions.
What's the evidence for that?
Are you
moving mountains with your faith? And if you're not, then you might ask, well, just how deep is your belief? Because in principle, if you have sufficient faith, then you can move mountains. And so...
Well, is that literal or is that figurative? To me, that's figurative, obviously. There's the verse in there that I think Jesus was speaking to. I forget who he was speaking to, but if you have faith, you could say unto this mountain, if you have the faith of like a grain of a mustard seed, you could say unto this mountain, be thou removed and be cast into the sea, and it would go. And that, to me, is not literal, even if Jesus said it. I mean, those are words attributed to Jesus because, as one of my former philosophy professors said, Jesus and Socrates had a lot in common. They had a lot to say, but they didn't publish. You're right, yeah. Socrates' words come down to us from his student Plato, primarily, and Jesus' words come down to us from those who are supposed to have been his apostles, and then later Paul and his followers and such. But I think Jordan's falling into a problem here already with the way he's couching this argument, or what he doesn't like, where it's a matter of degrees of belief. How do you measure belief? And he's saying that, well, there's hypocrisy. Somebody says they believe in Christ, but are you emulating him? Or you believe in a certain thing? But it's not fair to say somebody doesn't believe. I mean, a murderer might say he doesn't believe in murder. It's not a good thing. So what overtakes him to do it? Now, I understand what Jordan is saying here as far as actions go. It kind of says, you kind of do, or at least you did for a moment or a day when you went out on that murder spree. But there are people who believe, they say they believe in God, but what parts of God? And how does that translate into your everyday life? Does it mean you agree with the values that have been attributed to God? Like if we say kindness, wisdom, patience, long-suffering, there are things that are attributed to God in the Hebrew Bible, in Jeremiah, and then New Testament, and throughout. Like, okay, do you say you believe in those for yourself too? Or do you just believe in those about God or your notion of God? Let's see where Jordan goes now.
And is that literally the case? That's
Thank
a stupid question. So
He spoke in parables, so if you knew him, you knew what he was saying.
we move mountains all the time. We use like earth moving equipment to move mountains. We can move mountains, but and to some degree that's a manifestation of faith if you untangle it sufficiently. But when you read the biblical texts, for example, there's part of what you need to bring to bear on the stories is a bit of imagination. It's not a collection of scientific texts. That's not what it is. It's not even close to that. That's not what it is. So,
Right.
And most people who say to me, do you believe in God? This question's just a trap. And the trap is, are you willing to tell me that what I believe to be the case about what I believe is true? It's like, no, because we're not coming at the question from the same perspective. So, and then people are irritated at me because they say, well, you can't question what the person means to believe. And it's, well, that's what they're doing to me. So I see absolutely no reason why turnabout isn't fair play. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in your belief? What exactly do you mean? And you're going to ask a question that there isn't a deeper question than that. That is the most intrusive possible question. And then what are you just supposed to, that's just something casual? It's not casual. Not in the least. What did they say?
It actually can be. I disagree with him on that one too. Somebody can give an answer. Do you believe in God? Yes. Then you can say, well, what do you mean by that? But my perspective on intelligence is not what somebody knows. Intelligence includes in great measure the ability and willingness to endeavor to understand what someone else is saying when it's presented to you in a form or format in which you are not accustomed. For example, you might have studied at Harvard or Cambridge or Vanderbilt or somewhere. You might have studied English and grammar and have perfect sense of whether you should use the Oxford comma and when to use metaphors and how to write and verb tense agreement. You might be the world's greatest grammarian and when to use the word I instead of me. All these aspects of the subject, object, subject, all these things you might be well versed in. And then you're on a business trip in, say, the Appalachia somewhere, and there's a tornado, and somebody's on there who's missing teeth. Maybe she's overweight, and she speaks in horrendous English. And you refuse to try to understand what she's saying or identify in any way with the content of what she's saying because she's not speaking in proper English. That, to me, is a sign of a lack of intelligence. So where Jordan here is saying when somebody says, do you believe in God? Well, you can understand what they're saying, or you can it's an invitation to discuss it. But to go on a pedantic rage, if you will, or a pedantic rant about, well, that's idiotic and it's dumb, your question is dumb and all this stuff, that to me is a lack of intelligence. And he's got intelligence. And he's a trained psychologist, clinical psychologist, so he works with people, used to. I think Canada tried to disbar him or whatever they call it up there. I think he's fighting to get his license back, but he's not going to go broke anytime soon because he's very famous and he has a revenue stream. But I think his approach to this is overly pedantic.
Say, by their fruits you'll know them. Right, well,
Yeah.
There you go. That's the right answer to that question.
I was sitting and I'm praying. I'm like, God, like I know that question is pointless, right? Because obviously by your works, I know that you know that there is a creator out there and you're doing in every decision you can to not only please him.
I don't know if he's out there. Not sure exactly where he is.
Well, okay, fair. But so I was praying on,
Out there under the bed.
There's the question, and it came to me, and this is it. This is the question that I would replace that question with. And it's, do you love Christ with all of your heart?
Probably not. That's a hard stunt to pull off. And it's a hell of a demand.
Do you love your daughter with all of your heart?
Same question probably, same objection probably applies. Like, you know, none of us are unblemished vessels. So, no. Does that mean I'm not trying to? Well, I'm probably to some degree it means that. That's partly what in the Gospels Christ says, not people were calling him good, and he said
why do you say I'm good?
That's right. There's none but God who is good. Well, you know,
but he's patronizing them.
Yeah,
because they were patronizing him.
It's not only he may have been patronizing them, but to a point, with a point in mind, and not only that.
My mom used to always say, the only person you should look up to is Christ and the way he moves. And he was never disrespectful. The worst thing he ever did to somebody is let them go to their own decisions. And
no, not true. If you believe the texts, and I'm saying if, that's a contingent, right? I'm not saying I do. I have a lot of problems with the text. But that said, if you believe the texts, Jesus was not always the lovey-dovey character with people. He got in people's faces. I don't know, the blind guy wanted to be healed, and he was like, I'm not going to heal you. Like, get away from me type of thing. So, all right, let's see where the rest of this goes.
I found that to be very powerful because you could really take down anything in your life without being evil. To be strong is to put the armor of God on, from my perspective, right? Another man might not see that. But the armor of Christ, it's actually pretty magnificent when you put it to the test.
What do you mean?
I believe that when we encounter evil, it's never the human, it's the spirit. And I believe that when we deal with people, we want to use emotions instead of like logic. And for me, the Bible verse says, be angry, but sin not. He obviously knows you're going to be angry, but how are you going to deal with it? And then how you deal with it will outcome where you go from that point. I believe my God to be a good father. So if I'm asking him for me to be a mighty man and a man that could help my family, that could provide, that could put on these cameras and open up people's hearts, you don't think he's going to put me to a test that could make me explain to people how to get out of their situations? You're going to have to be put in a very hard circumstance for you to get out of it. But that's what you prayed for. So, for example, when I moved on to do this show, the one challenging dilemma that I had was forgiveness. And as a Christian, that should be the easiest thing in the world. But
well, forgiveness is difficult.
It's very difficult. And how I stumbled upon it is...
Well, it's difficult partly because it's not easy to understand the preconditions under which it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate?
Well, you can't give forgiveness away casually.
It has to be asked. You can't just give it to somebody who hasn't asked. Is that what you mean by that? Like somebody's wronged you, but you can't forgive them until they asked. Is that what you meant by that?
No, partly.
Usually, in the context of a relationship, look, if someone hurt you in the past and they're out of your life, there are practices that you might undertake to free you of the burden you might still be carrying because of their betrayal. But in the context of an ongoing relationship, it's very difficult and likely inappropriate to forgive without understanding. I mean, the process of forgiveness, say, among Catholics, Christians in general, but we'll stick with the Catholics for now, is, well, you have to confess, then you have to repent, then you have to atone. Like, there's a process.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm having a fight with my wife, let's say, or vice versa, and we're coming across an issue that's really quite sticky, and maybe there's some betrayal, real or imagined, involved, we have to get to the bottom of things. We have to sort out what happened. We have to set it straight, and then we both have to swear not to have that happen again. And then you can forgive and move on. But it's not like whitewash. It's not like you can paint over a situation. You have to deal with it.
All right. Well, that was interesting right there. And that was more philosophical and practical in ways. But I mean, Jordan is a learned man. That much is obvious. I think a lot of the issues were simplifying issues may or may not be his strong suit. But then again, these questions about belief and God, I mean, they are complex, and he's worked with thousands of people in his clinical practice, addressing how to better themselves. They came in to his office to seek help with their lives, and you get at frequently, it's not a cognitive dissonance, it's a disconnect in a sense between what people say or how they want to live or how they think they're living versus how they're actually living. What you say you believe isn't lining up with actually how you're living. Doesn't mean you don't believe those things. It just means that you're not taking the risk to put it out there to get to that belief. If you believe in gentleness, are you taking the risk when you get upset to interfere with your immediate reaction to pop off at somebody or blast off or let the adrenaline control you so that then you just lose it and you're no longer gentle, for instance? Or if you want to be bold, let's say you're a very timid, meek person and you want to be bolder in life. Are you taking the risk to speak up either for yourself or about a given situation? Maybe at work, in your conference meetings, there are other people who are type A's and you're a type B, but you really know you need to step up your game. Are you willing to risk your personal comfort zone to become more bold or bolder? And these are the sorts of disconnects that he's worked with people. And it does tie into what people say they believe. Now, do you believe in God? Somebody says yes. Then you could say, what's your conception of God? Well, an agnostic even might say, I look at the cosmos, or an atheist might even say, well, if you want to say that there's some being bigger than me, I call it the universe. Okay, that's different than Elohim or the various attributes or names that are considered to have been assigned to God, the creator, in Jews and Christians and even Muslims' minds, not necessarily Buddhists or Hindus, for example, Hinduists, but the nature of belief. Do you believe in God? Somebody could say yes. All right, fine. Generally, that means that there is a being, an independent agent with a mind that is much greater than me. That's a fair assumption to start with when somebody answers that question. If somebody says no, generally safe to say that they're an empiricist. A reductionist, perhaps. Everything can be reduced to physical properties. Thought, brain, when we die, even if there's a light that seems to shine and then the doctors resuscitate us and bring us back to light, it's like, well, those are just brain activities, physical activities. Everything we can do to a reductionist reduces to physical properties. But then we need to, Jordan used the example, well, do I believe in God the same way like I believe in this table? It's like, well, this table is actually comprised by and large of empty space. There are forces holding the electrons, neutrons, and all this together, and some more tightly than others, but a neutrino would go right through this as though there's nothing there. That's the theory, anyway, of neutrinos. So these are illusions as well. Is this here? So you could go down this rabbit trail if you, and we did, when I was studying philosophy and still do. You could follow the chains of reasoning to where you ultimately know nothing, but you believe things. Those are two very different statements. So anyway, there's Jordan Peterson. He's a Canuck, so I wore the hat in his honor. I hope you enjoyed that. Leave your comments, folks. If there's something that you'd like to see me cover, react to, it could be a video, it could be just a question, let me know. And if it's appropriate to the channel, I'll get to it. Have a great day, folks. I'll see you on another video, and keep thinking theology and try to be kind in the process.